Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. Today with me is Daniel McAdams, who's the Executive Director of the Institute for Peace and Prosperity. Welcome once again, Daniel.
Thank you, Dr. Paul.
Well, good. I'd like to talk a little bit about the Middle East. Not that we've never talked about the Middle East, but it's an ongoing crisis. I see that Iraq is a fiasco, but not this month. It's for 12 years or so, and it's not getting any better. But here's the headline of what's happening, since the failure at Ramadi, the giving up of Ramadi. Now there's the blame game going on. And this headline says, Biden tries to smooth over anger sparked by Carter's comment. That's Secretary Department of Defense Secretary. And what do you think he's angry about?
Well, I think Carter was on one of the talk shows on Sunday morning, if I'm not mistaken, and he was grumbling about the inability of the Iraqi army that had been trained by the U.S., of course, for a number of years at a cost of probably many hundreds of billions of dollars. The inability of that army, even though they outnumbered ISIS 10 to 1, their inability to hold Ramadi, and in fact that they turned and ran, and the quote that made the headlines was, "They lacked the will to fight."
Yeah, I just wonder why. But others have something to say about the Iraqi government. Our best friends and our allies, and we created them. And also the Iranians had an opinion, and they said, yeah, there was a lack of will to fight. And it happens to be, it looks like it was the United States that we were trying to precipitate something, but we weren't there fighting either. And I think they recognize this, and that was part of the problem as well.
And some of the Iranians and Iranian-backed militias have been very effective in fighting back ISIS. And as a matter of fact, they've been on the ground fighting very effectively. But of course, the U.S. is ambivalent is not even the word to describe how the U.S. feels about the Iranians active in Iraq, even if they're beating back ISIS.
Yeah, and the Iraqis pretend that they're in charge and they don't need us, and they say we don't really have to have you send troops on the ground, although there's probably well over 5,000 there already helping them out. They just want more and more equipment, and they'd like some more training, and they need more assistance and time. After 12 years, do we really think that's going to help?
Well, as you pointed out in a previous episode, all of the weapons that they left when they turned and ran, we now are having to send in missiles so that we can destroy more of our own weapons that are left in Iraq. So I don't know that more weapons are the solution to this problem.
But this is still part of a bigger problem. We talk about Ramadi and what happened there, and we didn't support the fight, and now it's who's going to get the blame. But it's still part of the bigger problem of why ISIS exists, which we spent some time on the other day, about why we have not been, really after the ISIS, that we actually support them, because it has been revealed, just as it was during the Russian Soviet occupation of Afghanistan, our strategy was to radicalize the Muslims and fight our battles for them. And still Brzezinski brags about that, back in the time when this served to help bring down the Soviet system. Of course, I always argue the Soviet system was doomed for economic reasons. But this is the same thing, radicalizing a certain group to pursue this, trying to get rid of Assad and trying to punish Iran. That's why, even though the Iranians, if we really didn't like ISIS, we'd probably work with Iran, wouldn't we?
There's sort of a similar scenario in both Syria and Iraq that are causing the need for radicalization. In Syria, you had a government that was not genuinely unpopular, as much as the West would tend to not agree with the form of government. So you had the difficulty of how do you get the people to turn against a leader who is not opposed by the vast majority. And the way that the U.S. decided, as we now know, to do it is to radicalize outsiders mostly to come in and essentially a foreign invasion. Well, the same is true in Iraq when you think about a lot of these Sunni villages that are seeing mostly Shia Iraqi army come in. The Iraqi army is, I think, understandably reluctant to engage Sunnis in Sunni villages, because if you don't have the support of the people on the ground, you get into guerrilla warfare situations.
And you know, we keep pointing out that it seems like we do things that aren't very helpful. I mean, is it really helpful to our national security? Are we safer because of this? Are we richer because of this? Are we freer because of this? And none of that happens. But there's the old-fashioned blowback from this too. You know, a lot of people think that even 9/11 was a blowback from our policies in the Middle East, starting all the way back to 1953 and our interference over there. But once again, there's going to be blowback, although they admit they radicalize Muslims to try to fight our battles for us. I don't think they have absolutely control of this. Are they going to be able to turn it off? Right now, they never turned it off after the Afghan war with the Soviets, but it just keeps going and they use it. But someday this just might get out of control, especially if we're weakened as a nation, and that's, I know, beyond anybody's comprehension that we would have a weakened military. But it might be that we will truly not have the will to fight, and there's been some hints of that, because it's popular now to say it was a mistake to go into Iraq and no more troops on the ground.
Yeah, you know, interesting about blowback, we've discussed this many times about how the media really walks hand in hand with the government when it comes to delivering propaganda. So you can imagine if this radicalizing Muslims in the region does lead to some blowback against the U.S., God forbid another type of attack, the media would never look at blowback as a cause. They would take the neocon line, it's because we didn't do more.
Yeah, you know, even Biden's statement confirms the fact that they still want to totally ignore the fact that anybody that can observe, you know, this recent released report by Judicial Watch, that this is not their policy. So he says, well, we got to smooth it over. This was a mistake. Carter shouldn't have said that. So we have to get along with our close allies, and we'll just get back into the training and the motivating business, and we'll finally get those troops to defend their homeland. I'm afraid the people who care about their homeland at now, as bad as the radicals are, it's a better bet for them than it is to endorse foreign occupation. And quite frankly, the real fear that our government ought to have from their viewpoint is, can they absolutely prove that they can keep Baghdad from falling without tremendous number of troops? That could be a big issue.
Could be, and you know, the word is that the administration is rethinking its Iraqi policy. You know very well the neocons who are both in the administration and on the sidelines of the administration are pushing this now. This is just another example. We need to go in full bore, full speed ahead, and reinvade Iraq.
Well, you know, once again, you know, Memorial Day.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, Dr. Paul, that, you know, there's a little bit of controversy over the speech that Obama gave on Memorial Day. And I was going to read you this one section that people were talking about and get your take on it. He said, "For many of us, Memorial Day is especially meaningful. It is the first since our war in Afghanistan came to an end. Today is the first Memorial Day in 14 years that the United States is not engaged in a major ground war."
You know, it's my desire, and probably the desire of all Americans, to say that is good news. And I want it to be good news, but it's sort of a gross distortion of what's really going on with our foreign policy. It is true that less Americans are being killed on this Memorial Day than it has been over the years, but we're still very vulnerable. We haven't changed our policy. We're still very much interventionists. We're still in great danger. Our liberties at home are still being attacked. And besides, if he was a true believer in what he says, because those are good words, and we shouldn't disagree with them, but if those were words he really believed in, he wouldn't be stirring up trouble in Ukraine. He wouldn't have said 3 years ago, approximately, to say that we have to join ISIS to get rid of Assad and stir up a civil strife there, and also be very much engaged with the Iraqis right now in prolonging and antagonizing what's going on there and not having a true fight against ISIS. So there's a lot of fighting going on, and it could explode. Let's say, though, that it drifts by for another year or two and we get a new president who happens to be a friend of Bill Kristol's. Who knows what would happen under those circumstances. But good words the president said. I wished I could believe it and get really excited about it. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report, and please come back soon.